In this video, we're going to look at some different topics on percentage. In the first part, we're going to look at converting percentages into fractions and decimals. Remember, a percentage is out of 100. So if we wanted to convert 10% into a fraction, we could write this as 10 out of 100. If we were asked to simplify this fraction, we can divide the numerator and the denominator by 10, and that would give me 1 over 10. So as a simplified fraction, 10% is going to be 1 over 10. I simply think to myself, percentage means out of 100, we've got 10%, so that's 10 over 100. If we had 5%, this is going to give me 5 out of 100. We can simplify this fraction, dividing the numerator and the denominator by 5, and that would give me 1 over 20. If we looked at 11%, this would be 11 out of 100. 11 is a prime number, so we can't simplify the fraction anymore, and we just leave it as 11 over 100. Let's look at 17.5%. I've chosen 17.5% as this is often used for VAT questions. So I could write this now as 17.5 over 100. We don't want the decimal in the numerator, so I'm going to multiply the fraction now by 10. So multiplying the numerator and the denominator by 10, we have 175 out of 1,000. If we were asked to simplify this, we could do the numerator and the denominator divide by 25, and that would give me 7 over 40. So if we wanted to convert now 17.5% to a fraction, we could write this in its simplest form as 7 over 40. If you're unsure about the highest common factor, just break it down. Divide by 5, divide and just keep dividing down until you get it in its lowest terms. Let's look at 150%. So we could write this as 150 divided by 100. It's 150 out of 100. The numerator and the denominator divide by 50, so we could write this as a top-heavy fraction as 3 over 2, or as a mixed number, 1 and 1/2. So converting a fraction, or converting a percentage to a fraction, we simply write it over 100 and then simplify the fraction. Let's now look at converting percentages to decimals. All we need to do here is divide by 100. So if we have 10%, if I divide 10 by 100, I'll have 0.1. If I have 5%, if I divide 5 by 100, I'm going to get 0.05. If I look at 11%, I'm going to end up now with 0.11. Often with these, it's easier to think of them about pennies and pounds. So if we think about now 5 pence as a pound, it's 0.05 pounds. It's the same essentially with percentages. So if we look at 17.5%, we can see that this will be 0.17. This is 17%, therefore we're going to have a 5. This is one that often confuses, but if we think about now 17%, writing 17% here, this would be 0.17. 18% is going to be 0.18, therefore halfway between is 0.175. If we now look at 50%, this is going to be 0.5, or if you like 0.50. A common error is to write that 0.5 is 5%. 5% is 0.05. So if we look at 150%, we could write this as a decimal as 1.5. So to convert now a percentage to a decimal, we simply divide by 100. Okay, let's move on and look at writing a quantity as a percentage of another. Let's take the example of a test score. If I did now a test score and I got 7 out of 10, we could write 7 as now a fraction of 10. We're going to start with some non-calculator examples. So if we start with non-calculator. So let's say I scored 7 out of 10 and I wanted to write this as a percentage. All we do is write 7 over 10. We know that percentage is out of 100, so we look to make the denominator of this fraction 100. I can see that I need to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 10, and that's going to give me 70 out of 100, which is 70%. So if we want to write 7 now as a percentage of 10, it's 70%. Let's look at another example. Let's say I scored 3 out of 20 in a test. We write 3 over 20, and we can multiply the numerator and the denominator by 5. This will then give me a denominator of 100. So we're going to have 3 out of 20, which will then become 15 out of 100. 15 out of 100 is going to give me 15%. So as we can see at the moment, our denominators are factors of 100. That won't always be the case, and we might have something, for example, like 4 out of 80. Or let's make it slightly easier, let's say 4 out of 40. What we could do now is simplify this fraction. We could of course multiply 40 by 2.5, but multiplying by an integer value is going to be quite hard. So if we look at this now, or non-integer value I should say, we could write this as 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10 will become 10 out of 100, which would give us 10%. If we had, for example, now 6 out of 40 in a test, we could write this as 3 over 20. We would then multiply the numerator and the denominator by 5. This would give us now 15 over 100, and we would end up now with 15%. So non-calculator, we're simply making the denominator now up to 100. Whatever we multiply the numerator by, we must multiply the denominator by to keep the same value. So let's do one more. Let's say we scored 7 out of 25. I can see that I need to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 4. So this is going to give me 28 over 100, which is going to give me 28%. Sometimes we will be expected to do this with a calculator. So let's look at some examples of a calculator problem. We might score in a test, let's say 29 out of 36. So let's write this here. 29 out of 36. At this stage, we don't really want to be messing about with this and trying to make this into 100. So all we do is write 29 over 36 and we multiply by 100. This will give me the percentage. So straight through the calculator with this, our test score was 29 out of 36. That's written now as a fraction, and then we multiply by 100. And that will give me now, just plugging that in, 80.6% correct to one decimal place. So 80.6%. So if we wanted to now write a quantity as a percentage of another, and we had 27.4 out of, let's say, 39.3, we would write it as 27.4 over 39.3 times by 100. Again, straight through the calculator with this, and that's going to give us 27.4 divided by the 39.3, and we multiply our answer by 100. So just checking the final value, that's going to give me 69.7%, and that is correct to one decimal place. So 69.7%. Straightforward, plugging it through a calculator. Okay, let's move on. What we're now going to do is build up a table of multipliers. In terms of the introduction of this, we've kind of looked at a little of it in this part right here. When we're working with multipliers, it can make our life significantly easier when we're finding percentage problems. What I'm going to do here is put now the multiplier of 1, or if you like 1.00. So what we've got here is a table, and I'm just going to fill in some values. So if I put here now my multipliers. So if we go for now the multipliers, so multipliers, okay. If I multiply something by 1, this will retain its value. This is 100%. If we now look at increasing and decreasing by given percentages, we can put these in a table. So let's now look at 0.99 as a multiplier. 0.99, this is going to be now 99% of the original. So if we look at this, we can say of the original, this is going to be 99% of the original value. So if you multiply a quantity by 0.99, you'll get 99% of what it was. If we want to look at this now as an increase or decrease, and I'll put this just here, we're going to have increase or decrease. We will have now a 1% decrease. So we have 1% decrease. So if we saw something in the sale and it had 10% off, we could write this as 0.9, or if you like, 0.90. I'm keeping the 0 on here just to give you some sense of it relative to 100. So this is going to be 90% of the original value, or now a 10% reduction. So this is a 1% decrease or reduction. This is a 10% reduction or decrease. So if I had 0.75, this would be 75% of the original, or we could say a 25% decrease. We can see that these two values are always going to equal 100. So if I now built it up this way, 0.01, this is going to be 1% of the original value, or we're going to have 99% reduction or decrease. 0.1 or 0.10, this is going to be 10% of the original, or a 90% decrease. So if I wanted to now decrease a quantity by 90%, I'd simply multiply it by 0.1. So if we look at that down here, if I was told to now decrease £25, we would have 25 multiplied by 0.1. This would give us now 2.5, and what we've done is decreased this by 90%, or we found 10% of the original. So let's look at some more. If we had now 0.24, this is 24% of the original, or we could say a 76% reduction or decrease. I'll put one more in here. Let's say we've got 0.5. This is 50% of the original, or we could say a 50% decrease. So that's decreasing now the quantities, or finding a percentage of the original that's less than 100%. If I now consider 1.01, if you wanted to look at this as a fraction, this is 101 of 100. We could see this now as 101%, or a 1% increase. So we're looking at increasing a quantity by 1%. So if I wanted to increase 25 by 1%, I could multiply it by 1.01. If I multiply something by 1.1, or if you like 1.10, this is 110% of the original, or a 10% increase. You could look at that as a fraction again, as 110 over 100. If I had 1.11, this would be now 111% of the original, or an 11% increase. So all we're doing is now increasing by a quantity. If I had 1.175, this is 117.5% of the original, or a 17.5% increase. Again, the reason I've included this is if we wanted to find the price of an item after VAT, assuming the VAT is charged at 17.5%, we would just go ahead. So let's say I had £25 before VAT, and I wanted to find the price after VAT. I could multiply this by 1.175, and that would tell me the price of this item after VAT was applied. So 25 times by 1.175, and that would give us now the cost of £29.37.5p. So it'd probably be rounded up or down. I'd say it'd be rounded down in a shop to £29.37. Again, that's up for a debate, but entirely up to you. £29.37 after VAT. So let's just write that down. So what we've got here is a table of multipliers. 1.2, this is going to be now 120%, or we would say now a 20% increase. If we wanted to go up 1.5, we've got now 150%, or we could say now 50% increase. Again, we can keep going with these. These are a table of multipliers, and they might help you with questions when you're increasing or decreasing by a given quantity. Okay, let's go on to looking at finding a percent of a quantity. I'm going to start off now with non-calculator, and then we'll move on to some examples of the calculator. The non-calculator ones generally are fairly straightforward. So let's start off with £54. What I'm going to do now is find percentages of £54. So what we can say then is that 54 will be equal to 100%. If I want to find now 10%, I can divide this quantity by 10. So what I'm going to do is write in here now that if I divide this by 10, 5.4, or if you like, £5.40 is going to be equal to 10%. So we've got £5.40, which is 10%. At this stage, we could find 5% by halving 10%. So we could say now that 2.7 was equal to 5%. If we wanted 1%, we would simply divide the 10% by 10, and that would give us 0.54. And this is going to be 1%. I've left now the 50%, as all we would do is half this, and we would have 27 is equal to 50%. With these values right here, we can make up any whole number percentage of 54. So what we've got here is now £54. Here we've got £27. We've got now £5.40. We've got £2.70. And this one we could either write now as £0.54 or 54p. So that's what we've got. We've got now a table where we can find any percentage of £54 when we've got an integer value, a whole number value. So let's look at this. If I wanted to find 15%, all I would do now is add 10% to 5%. So 10% plus 5%. So what we've got here are these two values added together, and that's going to give me now £8 and 10p. So all I've done is added the two values, and we can find that. That's one way that you could look at it. If we wanted to find 11%, we could do one lot of 10%, and then we would add to that now 1%. So we'd have now the £5 and 40p plus the 54p, and that would give us £5 and 94p. So we can find any integer quantity. Clearly, finding some is going to be easier than others. If you want, you could think, well, if 10% is £5.40, 20% will be double, 30% will be triple, and you can go from there. So for example, now, if we wanted to find 39%, I would say to myself now that this is going to be 4 times by the 10%, and then I would subtract away one lot of the 1%. And we could just go ahead and calculate that. So this is finding a percentage of a quantity. Let's now look at this with a calculator. So if we look at this with a calculator now, we can use our multipliers. So if I wanted to, and we'll start again with, let's say we have something a bit nastier. Let's say we have 36.27 centimetres. So with this one, I don't really want to build up a table of multipliers. Let's say we wanted to find now 26% of this quantity. All we would do is 36.27, and we would multiply this by 0.26. Or, if you like, you could simply write 36.27 times by 26 out of 100. This is a decimal equivalent to this fraction right here. So on a calculator, I've got 36.27, and I'm going to multiply that by 0.26. That will give me 26%, which is 9.4302. So if we like, 9.43 to 2 decimal places. 9.43, and that's 2 decimal places. If we wanted now, let's say 112% of this quantity, all we would do is take the value, 36.27, and we would multiply it now by 1.12. So that's 112%. If I wanted now 74%, I could multiply 36.27 by 0.74. If I wanted 17.5%, 36.27 times by 0.175, and that would give me now 17.5%. So if it's as a non-calculator question, we can now find, using our table of values, different multiples. If we don't have that, we can simply use a calculator and our table of values, or writing these as fractions, to find the percentage of a quantity. Okay, increasing and decreasing a quantity by a percentage. So if we go back here, we've looked at non-calculator and calculator. So let's say I wanted to increase, let's say we wanted to increase £54 by 10%. What we would look to do if this was non-calculator, and we would start here, we would find 10% and add it on. So we know that 10% is going to be equal to £5.40. All we're doing is dividing 54 by 10. Therefore, we would have now an increase of 10% would be the original, which is 54, plus the £5.40, and that would now give us a total of £59.40. So if we want to increase a quantity by a given percent, we find that percent and add it on. So if I wanted to decrease, let's decrease £30 by 15%. We know that 10%, so 10% is going to be equal to 3. 5% would be equal to half of this, which is 1.5. So combined, this is going to give me 4.5. So we would now take £4.50 off 30. So it'd be 30 minus 4.5, which would give us £25.50. So all I've done is decreased £30 by 15%, first by finding 15% and then subtracting it. So those are examples of non-calculator questions. Let's look at a calculator question. Let's say I was asked to increase, let's say we were asked to increase 21.64 by 12%. I don't want to be fiddling around doing this, so all I need to do is use my table of values. 21.64 times by my multiplier, which is 1.12. We would put that through a calculator, and that would increase it. If I wanted to decrease it now by 12%, I'd have 21.64 times by 0.88. This is increasing by 12%. This is decreasing by 12%. If you want to think about that now as 112 over 100, and this one as 88 over 100, these would give us the fractional equivalent to the decimals. So if we're increasing or decreasing a percentage by a given percentage, all we do is use our multipliers and go from there. So let's decrease £40 and 64p by 13%. If we decrease this by 13%, we have 87% of the original. So I would do 40.64 multiplied by 0.87. If I'm decreasing by 13%, I've got 87% of the original. So just pushing this through a calculator, 40.64 multiplied now by 0.87. So 87% of the original is representative of that 13% decrease. And if we wanted to round this to the nearest penny, £35.36. So that is increasing and decreasing a quantity by a given percentage. Let's move on and look at percentage increase and decrease. Often when we buy things, we sell them for more or less. What I'm going to look at now is a boat. So if I buy a boat, and I'm going to buy a boat for £300, I'm going to sell it now for £250, and I want to work out the percentage loss. So what I'm looking at now is the percentage loss of selling my boat. What we do here is look at the difference, we divide it by the original, and we times by 100. Now if you want, you could say gain or loss. I'm just going to call it the difference. We divide this now by the original, and we times by 100. So if we consider now the difference here is going to be 50 between the two. So what we do, we say the difference is 50. The original was 300. So we're always considering this as a percentage of the original, and then we multiply by 100. So if we do this in a calculator, if you want to cancel these, you can. If you're not so sure about that, you can just go ahead and write this now as 50 over 300. So the difference divided by the original. In this case, it's the loss divided by the original. We times this by 100, and this will tell me now that this is going to be a 16.66 or 16.7 decrease. So that's a loss of 16.7%, correct to one decimal place. If we look at another example, let's say I bought an antique picture. So let's say we bought a picture. I bought it for £40. I sold it for 64. We're going to look at the percentage gain. So percentage gain. The difference between the two is 64 minus 40. So I'm going to write 64 minus 40 over now the original. This is what I bought it for. That's the original. And then we'll multiply by 100. So what we've got here now is a total of 24 over 40 times by 100. And this will give me the percentage gain or the percentage increase. Again, if you want to simplify that fraction, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm just going to put it through a calculator. 24 over 40, and then we will times this by 100. So it's now the difference in the denominator. We can see here that this is a 60% increase. So we've made a 60% increase on that value. So that now gives us 60%. So this is looking at an increase or decrease in the value as a percentage. This is an example of a loss. This is an example of a gain. So if we did another example, we might have now, let's say we had some wages, and we said that 1 week we were paid £110. The following week we were paid £138. The difference now is going to be 28. The original is going to be 110, and we would multiply by 100. So if we look at the percentage increase, remember this is now relative to the original. In fact, we can put this as a fraction. Let's do 28 over 110, difference divided by the original, times by 100. That's going to give me now a value here of 25.5%, and that's correct to one decimal place. So 25.5% to one decimal place. So that gives me now the percentage increase. If we went down from the 110 to now 81, the difference is 19. We look now at, sorry, the difference is 29. We look at the original, 29 over 110 times by 100, and we would get a very similar value. And that would be now roughly, again, 25% decrease. So that's looking at increasing and decreasing by these values right here. So it's of the original. What loss or gain have you made? Okay, let's move on and look at something called reverse percentage. If I go to a sale and we see that there's 10% off a toaster, so off a toaster, and we'll write this here, off a toaster, and the toaster now costs, so it's now 30, let's go for £30. We want to know, let's go for £30. We want to know what it was before. Now, the way I like to set these up is the following. We say that the price of a toaster multiplied by 0.9. If this has had a 10% decrease, it's 90% of the original is going to give me £30. All we need to do is write that the price is going to be £30 divided by 0.9. A common error is to find 10% of this value and go ahead and add it on. So whatever the price before was, and if you like, you could write this, let's just write this as price, and then we would have now 90 of the 100 multiplied by the price gave us 30, so we could say that the price was going to be equal to 30 divided by 90 100s. It's entirely up to you. So if I do that, 30 divided by 0.9, that's going to give us now a value of £33.33. Remember, if we're dividing by a number between 0 and 1, the value is going to get bigger. So let's go ahead and look at some other examples. This now was where we had a 10% discount. Let's look at some wages. We might have had a wage increase. So I might have had a wage increase of 14%, and I now earn £126.24. What did I earn before? So after a 14% increase in my wages, I earn £126.24. So my wages were multiplied by 1.14, and that gave me £126.24. Therefore, my wages will be £126.24 divided by 1.14. If this value, W, is multiplied by 1.14 to give us the value here, then the value of W is simply the 126.24 divided by 1.14. So if we go ahead and do that, we can see that 126.24 divided now by 1.14, that's going to give us a total of £110.74 roughly. So 1110.74 approximately. Again, I've just chosen these figures. That is what I earned before. Now, if you think about it here, if we go ahead and increase this by 14%, we'd multiply it by 1.14. So if I multiplied it by 1.14, we're going to get exactly what we expect of £126.24. So we can see we're working backwards. It's not a case of finding 14% of this value and taking it off. It's considering what the value was before and then using a multiplier. So if we do one more last one, let's say now that my wages dropped. So my wages were reduced by 11% after the reduction. So after they were reduced, I earned £417.28. What were they now before? We could say that my wages multiplied, it's been reduced by 11%, which means that it was 89% of original, so 0.89, and that gave me the 417.28. If this number multiplied by 0.89 is 417.28, we can say the number W is 417.28 divided by 0.89. So straight for a calculator, we will look at what my wages were before. We can see dividing by a number between 0 and 1 is going to make this value bigger. So we've got 0.28, and then we will divide this by 0.89, and that will tell me that my wages before were £468.85. So £468.85 before I had a wage reduction of 11%. So £468.85, give or take, gives me that value. Again, all of these examples are open to interpretation with the rounding, but this is showing you the method that you need to learn. So there we go. That's a basic overview of percentages. We've looked at reverse percentage, percentage increase and decrease. We've looked at increasing and decreasing by a given percentage. We've looked at finding a percentage of a quantity. We've looked at multipliers, a table of multipliers. We've looked at writing a quantity as a percentage of another. And we've looked at converting percentages to fractions and decimals.